Congressman Ron Paul was in a vote, and he's out now, so a good chance to talk to him because a lot of people have been waiting to see it.
Well, and Congressman Reed says, we just asked Congressman Congressman Blackburn.
Yeah.
I'm getting, there's so many of you. It just seems like all over from different states. Congressman Paul, one of the questions was, if it's not Timothy Geithner, who would it be? Reed, one of our viewers, says, what about Ron Paul taking the position as Treasury Secretary?
Oh, yeah.
What do you think? You're up for that?
No, not really. Not under these circumstances, because the system is flawed. That's why the individual can be the target, and we can talk about Geithner. But you get Geithner out, you get somebody else in, he has to accept the same rules and the conditions. The Congress gives him money, and he gets suspended. So no, it's the system that needs challenged. But I sort of like the argument that people want to challenge Geithner, because it sort of undermines his credibility, because I don't think these programs should exist. So we don't want him to be successful in socializing the nation.
All right, let's. We have a few minutes here to talk this through, I hope. So one of the things we have today, Congressman, is a poll question to our audience, and they've been weighing in on it in real time throughout the show. And the question was this: what do you consider to be the primary catalyst of the recession? We gave people a number of choices, and feel free to add one yourself. But housing bubble, subprime mortgages, that's got a slight lead right now, 43%. Lack of consumer savings, government spending, Wall Street as a whole, or they're all equally responsible, which happens to be in second place. What would you say?
I would say, I didn't hear you say debt. It's debt. It's excessive debt by individuals, corporations, and government because of the illusions developed with an inflationary climate which is created by the Federal Reserve. We do a lot of things. We borrow too much money. Finally, debt overwhelms, and it overwhelms the consumer and the businessman and the system, and things come to a halt because it was an illusion to think that we were actually working hard and saving money, which we were not.
And let me stop you right there, because I was actually reading Glenn Beck's magazine, Fusion, where you have an article, how the Fed caused the current crisis in his issue. So are you saying that it's Ben Bernanke and team, not necessarily Tim Geithner? Is it the central bank that you're referring to as potentially the heart of what's causing this crisis?
Or Alan Greenspan and team, for that matter.
Yeah, now that's the right comment. It's the central bank. And Bernanke has compounded the problems because he hasn't accepted a new concept of monetary policy. And Greenspan was a major player in this and responsible for a lot. But it's the system. It's actually started to develop in 1971 when the last linkage to gold was removed, and since then the Federal Reserve has been given license to inflate. And also they have had the privilege of doing it without any transparency. They are not obligated to tell us a thing. So we talk about how are we going to figure out who got the bonuses. At the same time, the Fed extends loans and guarantees to all their friends in the business and the banking community, as well as other central banks. They are the most powerful branch of government, more powerful than the other three branches.
Well, here's the thing. There's a fundamental difference, right, in the way you approach this and the way members of the administration would approach it, like a Tim Geithner, who was asked very many of these same questions earlier today. And one of his first responses, I think, would be telling in that. And he came out today, Congressman, and said that history has shown us that more government action, not less, in times of an economic crisis is what you need. In other words, crises have become worse, whether it's a Great Depression or other crises in other countries over time, when the government doesn't act enough. That's the fundamental view he holds, and that's what he's operating on. I mean, he said as much today. Why, what's wrong with that from your point of view?
Well, it's just wrong because Bernanke is a historian and is supposed to understand the Great Depression, but I think he understands it in exactly the opposite way, because Austrian free market economists see that they did way too much. Started under Hoover, and Roosevelt continued it. If you compare it to the Depression of 1921, which was a consequence of the inflation of World War I, you would say, well, why did it only last a year? We don't even remember the
Well, a lot
Depression
of those Roosevelt
1921.
arguments were when we were already in a steep decline, right? I mean, a lot of people would say that not enough was done in the Hoover administration when some of the big banks were allowed to fail. And that's the Bernanke argument that, hey, listen, we shouldn't allow these banks to fail in the early 30s, or and you say that's wrong?
Oh, absolutely, because it was the inflation by the Federal Reserve in the 1920s that created the bubble. So he says the solution to the inflation of the 20s is to reinflate again, and his argument is, well, the Fed just didn't inflate enough. Well, right now, he's working very, very hard to inflate, but there's a certain point when it becomes pushing on a string. Nothing happens. If people aren't ready, they want to hold back because the consumer is too much in debt. People need to quit spending. They need to work hard, pay down their debt. We need to reduce their taxes and reduce their regulation. After World War II, we finally got out of the Depression because we lowered spending by 2/3 and lowered taxes by 1/3. That's the kind of policies that we need now.
So, Congressman, can I stop you
suspend
there
the income tax right now.
Congressman, just let me stop you there for a second, because as we're looking kind of back on history, a couple of our viewers want to look forward, and I do as well. And Jack was asking, okay, so this is your point of view. How do you fix it moving forward? Is it impossible in the system that you're criticizing right now?
No, it's very possible to do what I just suggested. Cut spending and cut taxes and pay down debt. And you'll have a bad year. There's no magic to the pain and suffering that was brought on by the Fed over these many decades. Sure, everybody loves the boom, everybody hates the bust. And there was too much spending, too much borrowing, and too much money creation. So we're trying to solve the problem by doing exactly the same thing.